For those of you who don't know Dan yet, because you will soon, he is a successful tech entrepreneur, having exited 3 companies. He is an accomplished investor, having invested in over 40 startups. And he's a renowned speaker who is sought out to speak at major events all over the world. He's worked with the likes of Mark Cuban, Richard Branson, and the founder of Uber, who was an investor in one of his companies. His YouTube channel has the largest audience for software entrepreneurs ever. Many of you already know that Dan also went through the Portage program when he was a teenager. He's not shy about sharing this publicly and creating that awareness in itself of how Portage can help youth with substance abuse issues is already so helpful to Portage. The difference Dan makes in these boys' lives is profound. Hearing from Dan what he went through and where he is today shows these young men they are capable of great things too. Dan makes it clear to the youth that he sees potential in them, that he believes in them. Some of them haven't heard those words very often. He's even been known to tell them to call him once they reach a specific goal, and he gives them his cell phone number. Many of them say he is inspirational, that he gives them hope, that he sees them for who they want to be. But ultimately, Dan is an amazing role model. And so today, we are very honored to recognize Dan as an outstanding role model for Portage.
This is 22 years in the making, but I want to say thank you to Dr. Howlett and Vamos and King and the Lions Club and everybody that was involved, Crystal, Luke, Jordy, Doris, and I know I'm forgetting some names, but everybody that was involved in the early days of Portage. On behalf of my friends, my family, my father, my beautiful wife, and most importantly, my 2 amazing little boys, thank you for saving my life. Thank you. One thing I believe is that we all have the ability to extend our belief in other people in a way that many times they're not able to see or even ready to receive. And what's interesting for me as I kind of look over my life and some of the things that I've accomplished and the people have showed up is many times these people didn't even know that they were doing these acts of incredible transformation to us, right? They're sentences that are said in passing. They're moments where somebody shares something with you and you reply to them, and you never really know the impact that you have till years later when, if you're lucky, they stop you and thank you, like, Jen and Gage sharing their story tonight. And for me, that the moment when I look back as to when that first happened to me was, I was 16 years old, sentenced to an 11-month sentence in St. John Regional Correctional for the severity of my crimes. I got sentenced to an adult facility, and it was essentially a therapeutic community in an adult, correctional center. And this had not been the first time I was in jail, and I'd gone to many other programs, and I decided that time, though, it was going to be different. And I showed up, and I did the work, and I went to school, and I tried to better myself. And it was maybe 3 months into the program. The way they did breakfast was everybody came out of the cell blocks and sat down and had breakfast, and they'd put a pot of coffee and, toast, jam, and some meats. And, at one point, there's this kid sitting across from me named Kurt. Now, I don't know if you guys, went to high school with these, young, muscly, essentially a genetic freak. He had like an 8-pack. This was Kurt. I was like, I didn't know 15-year-olds came that way. And so all of a sudden, Kurt goes and reaches for the pot of coffee, and it's empty. And as he pours it, he looks around and he said, "Who's the goof that drank the last pot of coffee?" And I knew it was going to be on. And everybody looked at me, and I was like, fuck. I said, "I did. What are you going to do about it?" And next thing you know, Kurt jumps up. Boom! Fight goes off in the cell block. The guards rush in, grab us. My feet didn't touch the ground. They walked us right down the hallway and threw us into solitary confinement. And I will tell you, as a human, one of the worst things you could do to another person is strip them down to their underwear, 23 and a half hours in light, locked up, not knowing how long you were going to be in that place. And as I sat there on the concrete bed, staring at this stainless steel toilet and sink, it gave me a lot of time to reflect on my life and what I needed to change. And it was on the third day of being in the hole, they called it, that the door opened and there was a guy there named Brian. And Brian was one of the guards that worked at the facility. And what you need to know about Brian is he was stern but fair. He was the kind of guy that if you listened to him when it was time to clean up or finish your homework, that he would look the other way, if you wanted to grab a second dessert, right? But when he talked, people listened because there's a respect there. And here he was, he opens the door, his head shaking, absolutely disappointed, and just says, "Come with me." And I leave the cell and I follow Brian, and we're walking down the hallway back to the cell block. And as we walk down the hallway, we actually pass the door to the cell block, and we go to the second door, which is the guard unit. And I'd never been in the guard unit because it's a one-way mirror, and I also knew I was not supposed to be in the guard unit. And he brings me in, he asks me to sit down, and I sit down in the corner of this unit, and he just looks at me. And I figured, oh man, I'm gonna hear it now. And he says to me, he looks and he goes, "Dan, why are you here?" And I'm like, "I got in a fight with Kurt." And he's like, "No." He goes, "What are you doing in this place?" "Stolen car, drugs." He goes, "No." He said, "What are you doing in this place?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And Brian said, "I just want you to know that I've been working here for almost 10 years, and I meet a lot of kids, and you don't belong here. And I see you do your homework, and I see you try to stay out of trouble, and I want you to know that you don't belong here." And as a 16-year-old boy, maybe I'd heard it from other people prior and I wasn't ready to listen, but here's a guy that obviously came from a place to share that message, to believe in me in a way that I could have never believed in myself. And something shifted in that moment. And I realized there was an opportunity for me to take a different approach and better myself. And after 2 months of working on myself and doing the program at St. John Regional, I had the privilege of being released into custody at Portage, New Brunswick. And what's crazy is I only had 5 months left to do. Back then, there were longer programs. And everybody thought, I was just telling this to Jordy, that a lot of people thought I wouldn't stay after the 5 months because essentially I didn't have to. And I'd been gone for almost a year. And I did. And I needed that. And I remember, my dad was there in court. I tried to get into Portage, and back in the day, Pierre Robert said, "No, go do some time." It was the right call, 100%. I did an 11-month program. I had a lot of work to do. When you hear Gage and others say 6 months, that just gives you a sense of how deep I had to go. Luke one time caught me freaking out. I was chief. I had the keys. And this kid, Bobby, just wouldn't stop annoying me to the point where I literally threw them across the bedroom and jumped out of a window and said, "I'm running away and screw this place, and I'm going to go pull a Keenan," which was a guy that tried to run away and after 3.5 hours in the rain decided to walk back. But I think I said I'm better than Keenan. And Luke found me and walked me off the ledge. So it's interesting. At the end of that program, I was helping Rick Cook, one of the maintenance guys, clean out a cabin that was on I don't even know if it's still there, but it was part of the old buildings, and there was this old book on Java programming in a 486 computer just sitting there. And I opened up this book, and I'd never seen computer code, and I started it read like English. I always thought it was like, ones and zeros and hexadecimal numbers, and it said, "If this, do that." And I just, chapter 1, followed the instructions, and 25 minutes later, I had the computer saying, "Hello, world." And I thought to myself, this is how egotistical sometimes you can come off. I was like, man, I must be like a Doogie Howser of computer programming. like a secret, and all my friends are laughing because they clearly know that wasn't the case, but like, I literally thought that was, maybe I was gifted or something. Oh yeah, stories you tell yourself. But here's the reality. And then we're gonna sit down and do some Q&A, but Portage and programming, for me, allowed me to rebuild the relationship with my family, my father, learn what made me tick, my values, and all these success, the person I am today. It's why it's so important for me to share my story, is 100% the byproduct of that place. And the way I see it is computers became my new addiction, which my dad always said, man, Dan, if you could just find something that you're passionate about that isn't illegal, I think you'd do okay for yourself. Plead with me. Plead. And I just feel super blessed and honored that since then I've had the privilege of, and building my own companies and investing in others and, also being in a position to support the next generation of graduates and work with at-risk youth all over the world. I share this story with adults in San Quentin jail and Kern facility in the US and, give them hope as grown men that are doing life sentences that life can actually be pretty freaking awesome. So I want to wrap up just by saying that I truly believe we all have that power, that in these moments, tomorrow, next week, you might come across somebody and see something in them and just be really impressed. And in that moment, you have two decisions. You can either stop and take the time and let them know, or you can continue doing what sometimes is the easiest, which is think it to yourself and move on. And I just think that, wow, what a special gift we all have to truly to share our excitement, belief, and just appreciation for somebody else's gift in many times when there's no way they would see it for themselves. So my friend Josh Shipp, who has an incredible story of his own of foster homes, et cetera, and just becoming an incredible author and speaker, he has a quote that says, and I think it's super fitting for this room, that every kid is one caring adult away from the next success story. I truly believe that. And there are so many people like Brian, the staff at Portage, the folks that I've never even had the opportunity and the privilege to meet that just had such a huge impact on my life and continue to this day. And if you don't feel like you can be that caring adult, what I would encourage you to do is to donate to Portage, and we will be that adult for you and continue on supporting the program. So with that, I want to thank you guys again for having me tonight.
One of the things that struck me about your presentation, Dan, is you're talking about a transformation. And what is it about certain individuals that this transformation from adolescence to adulthood? Can you talk a little bit about your process of, first, do you now consider yourself an adult?
No, I mean, if you ask my dad, he would be like, I think eventually he's going to grow up.
Yeah.
It's true. I don't mean to pick on him, but he's my best friend. I just think that it's this journey, and too often I was talking to a few of the recent graduates where they still feel like they got to figure it out, and I don't know a lot of adults that have figured it out. And when I go and talk to the kids at Portage, the young men and women, my message is really simple: is just be okay not knowing. One of the things that I share quite often with people, and I think this pertains to everybody in this room, is for me anyways, is I could have never described my life today. And I don't say that to brag, but it's just like literally just, I feel super grateful and blessed. And the only explanation I can give is dream big and give yourself permission to do that. Take action, massive action, JFDI style. You guys can Google that. And be grateful. when you win and when you lose, and just be grateful for having nothing and the fact that you get to breathe today, because I think that's always an easy place to start, and just be grateful when great moments come to you. And I think that if that could be a driving kind of principle for a lot of the kids in that transformational state, I think that that's a good place to start.
And you told a very vivid story about being incarceration. What is it about that you were in a building locked up for, as you mentioned, for 23 hours in a room? But some of us through our lives have been in various states of incarceration without being incarcerated. If you see what I'm getting at here, how does that how's that impacted you in your life? And, and do you find yourself still imprisoned at some point?
A lot of stuff. I mean, there's a few things there. One, I just feel, because I went through so much at such a young age, that the stuff I do today where people are like, man, you're such a big risk taker, I laugh. I'm like, not really. Like, this business deal, that's little compared to the kind of risks I used to take. And so there's that aspect of just, I'm grateful for what I went through. I wouldn't change a thing. Unfortunately, obviously, I hurt a lot of people along the way, but it also shaped me to who I am today, and I'm really happy with that. So that's the first thing. But the second part of it, I think, is that some people do feel like they might be, you don't have to be locked up to still feel constrained, or that you're stuck. And what I learned at Portage that served me in the most enormous way in business was the power of being around people that have been there before. When I got to Portage, I was in a hole, and all of a sudden I met some of the staff that I mentioned tonight that had already climbed out of that hole and were able to give me guidance into where to put my hands and my feet to make that journey. And it doesn't matter what struggle you're having in your life, if you can find people that have gone through that and successfully done it and spend as much time. One of my mentors, Ken Nickerson, who I met through Frank McKenna, when I decided to move to San Francisco to spread my wings and see if this internet thing was a big deal, he said, find the smartest people you can and spend as much time as they'll allow you to spend without being creepy. That was his advice, and it's great advice. So I just think that, Portage taught me just this beautiful lesson of the power of positive peer pressure.
Someone like me who would look at you at age 16, and this, let's face it, the world is full of, we have preconceived notions, right? And many of us have been with people who, for whatever they're going through, have said, there's nothing we can do, it's hopeless. But what is it about these people you're talking about, these mentors, the people who work like Luc and others here? What kind of freaking quality does a person have to be able to, when everyone else has given up hope, to see that through?
Yeah, so what's interesting for me is two things. One, when I go speak to the kids, one of the messages I want to share with them is that they are in a unique position because of their circumstances to create incredible value in the world, because they've already got the base skills. All right, so what I mean by that, I got my MBA on the streets. I got my business acumen selling drugs. I learned about financing, cash flow, debt by fronting people drugs. And I say that jokingly, but the truth is that, there's so many lessons that these kids have innate, and the only thing that they're missing is just that direction, right? Just that outlet that is positive, not negative. And if they can figure that out, they're unstoppable. And I believe that. I believe that people that can deal with the most uncertainty are able to create the most in the world, because that's what's required. And a lot of these kids have that in spades, because their environment, for the most part growing up, was very uncertain. And what I want to share in regards to what makes, some of the staff at Portage be the kind of people that don't give up, I think it's because they absolutely love and they see themselves in all the kids and all the residents. And it reminds me of a time one day, me and my dad were walking on the beach, and I just looked at him and I asked him why he didn't give up. Because when I looked back over the things that I put my family through, it didn't make sense. And he just paused and started tearing up, and he just said, "It's because I loved you. Gosh knows sometimes I wanted to. I just couldn't." And I just believe that's what's true in all those counselors and the staff and the people on the board and everybody in this room, right?
Okay, so we're transforming from the there and then to the here and now. We have a room full of people who, have heard some great testimony from people like yourself tonight, and of course, what we've been talking about here. How can we make this even better?
I think one of the biggest things that I hope people realize in hearing Gage's story and my story is addiction affects everybody. And some of you guys have family members, loved ones, neighbors that are alcoholics or deal with drug problems and maybe are silently dealing with these issues and you don't even know. And I think too often, especially when I go speak with at-risk youth, there's this perception that these kids are, from single parent families or on the wrong side of the neighborhood or whatever. And the truth is they're your neighbors, they're your family members. These are people in society, and addiction affects everybody. And I just think that we all have the opportunity to support, especially if we can work with the youth, to really stop, multi-generational. Like that, the thing that I'm most proud of is my kids won't know what addiction is because of the work that, thank you. Again, because of the, Portage and the people that showed up in my life.
So just to finish off, whatever happened to Kirk?
Man, I got so many stories, and I wish they had a great ending.
That sounds like a facetious question, but ultimately, how rare are you? I mean, you're just like one in.
I don't want to be rare. I was actually screaming, heavily influencing the conversation over there. Here's the deal. Every time I go speak to kids, I tell them, you get out of Portage, you stay sober for a year, you message me. If you can't figure out how to get a hold of me, you're not trying too hard, because I'm everywhere, right? And I will help you create your dream life. And when I say that, and people that know me, I don't mean that like a little bit. I mean, I will put the full weight and force of every resource I have in my powers to create that for that person.
Wow.
Because one of the biggest things I learned from Portage, and this is the first thing that they taught, I don't know if it came from AA, but you can only keep what you give away. And in doing that, I get to keep my sobriety. I get to keep the peace, the love that shows up in my life by doing this. So I think a lot of people would say, why do you tell your story? What's the upside? Because I have the opportunity to connect with people on a deeper level than otherwise would be just mostly surface.
Was it parking front?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go down and have a look at it.
Wanna go look? Let's go look. I'll be back. My dad hasn't seen it.
Oh my God! Can I sit?
Yeah, sit in. All right, now I'll take it because he's gonna want to start it. Thanks so much. Yeah, just hold on right up here. Right there.
Oh.
Now hit the start button down on the thing. Right down there. It's on the console. Start. Down lower. Right there. Up. Right there. Oh, fuck.
It's nice.
It's all right.
Shut it off.
You just hit the button again.
How do you shut it off?
You just pull up and then push with your elbow. Yeah. And then I just grab on right here.
Oh wait.
Yeah.
Oh my God. There's not much room in this thing.
It's not meant for a daily drive or not for running errands.
I think my caravan is more comfortable. Honestly.
Thank you so much.